Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to another stream. This one will be a fiery one, let's say that. And it is about Glaurung. Dan and I told you last time we want to talk about warriors. He's not really a warrior, although he is. And yeah, Dan, introduce yourself first of all, and then tell the listeners why we choose or picked Glaurung and why he would fit that topic, or hopefully does.
Okay. Well, I have a little bit of a theory about this, like a slight theory, that might tie in with him being a warrior of sorts in a more literal sense. Maybe we'll get onto that in a few minutes. But Glaurung was the father of dragons. He was the first dragon. He was one of the greatest dragons in history and one of the terrors of the First Age. Really interesting character as well. Much like Smaug later, he's got a personality. He's got a sense of cunning about him. And yeah, we'll get stuck in.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, so I think that sets it up perfectly. And I think it's really important to know that, when you talk about Sauron's or Morgoth, this is his master was Morgoth, because we're talking First Age here. I think it is important to know that he is not of the concept of, a random orc just following orders. I think the concept of Glaurung and the dragons is very, very different, at least how I would interpret it. And they have a mind of their own. And I think we'll talk about it a bit deeper soon. How that is possible, that he's not just a minion and a follower, but he has kind of his own agenda, obviously always in like Morgoth's big master plan. But this is why he is way more important than orc XYZ, right?
Yeah, he's a knight or a bishop on the chessboard, isn't he?
For sure. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And also, I think we were talking this week a little bit, and I was trying to make a list of evil warriors, and there aren't that many bipedal evil combatants who use weapons who are qualified as bona fide warriors that we can really talk about.
Yeah.
So we've expanded our remit a little bit.
Yeah, but he was, I'm not 100% sure, but wasn't he also the first in command? I mean, that changed over time a little bit. Gothmog also had that position for Morgoth, but that was later on. So I think he was his first in command, right?
Well, he was when he first, we'll get to the story, but when he first was on the scene, he did command parts of Morgoth's armies. It's not like that clear who was in charge of which battalion in which battle. But he was, if not the king piece, he was definitely, as I said, he was a bishop or a rook.
And
as was Gothmog and as was Sauron.
Yes, and unlike Morgoth, when there was just Sauron later on, Sauron commanded the armies differently. He was on the battlefield many times. Morgoth, and again we'll get to that later, didn't really fight, and there is that scene with Fingolfin when Fingolfin asks him to come out of his hiding and really fight. So this is why he needed people like Glaurung, like Sauron, like Gothmog to command, because he didn't. He was not on the battlefield, and I don't think he was telepathic and telling them. I mean, he needed to be there, so he needed people like Glaurung with a mind of their own, because obviously battles change, and this is how I would interpret it, and this is why he would fit for me in the category of warrior.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The reason I would possibly theorize on warrior a little bit as well is the Legend of Sigurd, which you were going to talk about. So I don't want to steal your thunder because it's your time, but he the dragon in that tale starts off as a dwarf, doesn't he? Which makes you wonder about Glaurung's origins. is all I'll say.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I find it very interesting. And you know, there are, I think we both talked about that either in private or in our last video, because the concept of, you know, sub-creation. Morgoth obviously couldn't create any living being by himself, so he needed to either, you know, mingle a few beings like snakes and lizards or whatever that were already there. And there are many theories out there because Tolkien never exactly tells us what happened and what he did. I think you can guess by his looks. And then it's also stated, you know, that Glaurung was bred in the pits of Angband, and that's obviously not a process of a month or a day or something. I think he experimented with a lot of beings for a long, you know, a bit like Frankenstein, for a very long time. And then
you can kind of imagine a sort of department of like research and development in Angband that's full of mad scientists, Balrogs or something, that we're coming up with harebrained schemes to try and come up with something particularly hideous and dangerous.
Yeah, and the reason was, you know, he saw his orcs, because he obviously had the orcs, who in the concept of Tolkien, I mean, again, there are different versions, but in the concept of Tolkien, the most accepted one is the orcs come from elves, right? Because Morgoth couldn't create, but then there are different versions, but Morgoth, in this legendarium, Morgoth couldn't create on his own, so he corrupted elves, and those were the orcs. So he, you know, he saw he couldn't fight and withstand the Noldor, because literally the Noldor that came to Middle-earth were so strong. They had the best weapons, and he was defeated
smart as well, and smart, with a lot of ingenuity about them, and sort of smarts about them.
And they had the light of Aman is still in them, you know. So he saw, oh God, I can't defeat these people. I need something else. So he came up with these fire drakes, or Uroloki, or however you want to call them, because he saw he needed more than just orcs.
Yeah, Uroloki meaning fire serpent. Got that in my notes here.
Exactly. Yeah, and Glaurung, the name, I think I looked it up because I didn't know that, but then I read a passage. I think it was in Morgoth's Ring. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a while ago. And it means something with golden worm or something like that. There's no okay. And
it's actually, I think it's probably the same root as Glorfindel, actually. Golden hair, Glor. So yeah, it's gold worm, which again ties in with the legend of Sigurd and Fafnir.
Yes, exactly. So I think he had golden scales, and we learn later, you know, in the first time he showed up, he was pretty young, and the scales haven't, you know, he was not in his full power and glory and might, you know, and the elves actually could hurt him. The arrows and shafts could still hurt him, and we know from later on, or actually early on, because The Hobbit came out earlier, but still that was later, that Smaug, you couldn't really, if the dragon is of full age, you can't really hurt. There are not many places you can hurt a dragon with an arrow. Yeah, so he was bred in Angband. He showed up the first time 260 first
60.
age, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, what happened? Do we want to talk about that?
So at the time,
should we do the Sigurd thingy first, maybe, because that's like the backstory.
Yeah, we've talked about that already, so let's start with that.
Yeah, perfect.
So let's tell the start of that story. I think I don't want to tell you what to do here, but we should tell the end of that story when we tell the end of the Glaurung story. Would that make sense?
Good. Yeah, perfect. So you don't want to foreshadow any? No, it fits to the Turin story. You're completely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So 260, but nothing really. I mean, what happened then? Did you?
So yeah, so at the time, Beleriand was in a sort of state of Cold War. The Noldor had come early on. I think it was year 60 they arrived, or it was very early, wasn't it? You know dates better than I do. And around the year 260, when after the Noldor had been there for a couple of centuries already, and they'd driven Morgoth back into his fortress of Angband, and laid it under siege. There'd been little sort of border skirmishes and things, but there hadn't really been a major battle in all that time. Glaurung escaped his bonds, and he actually arrives on the scene earlier than expected, as you said. So he was underdeveloped, and although he did a lot of damage initially, Fingon manages to chase him off with a band of archers.
Yep.
And sends him packing with his tail between his legs.
Yep, exactly. And Morgoth was actually not that happy because, you know, he liked secrecy. He liked his weapons to unfold. You can see that later when Tolkien says he had a last powerful weapon in the last war with the elves and Morgoth when he unleashed Ankalagon the Black. So he didn't want his enemy to know what he was capable of and what was coming at them, because the concept of a dragon, a fire-breathing gigantic dragon, was pretty new. Nobody ever saw that before. And he wasn't super happy Glaurung showed himself. But then, you know, he didn't show himself in the full might. And maybe it was a good thing. I always think, well, a good thing for Morgoth. Because then the elves thought, well, we can beat that thing. And it was just him. But then Tolkien says that he bred many more dragons. So this is why he's called the father of the Uruloki or dragons, because we believe that he bred more dragons that later then, for example, because he was dead when they attacked Gondolin, but there were fire drakes.
I think his children were there in the Neonath and Odiad as well.
Yes. Yes.
That's the first time we see them, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, they're not named, but he had children. The text hints at that.
Yeah.
And I think
there's not a clear sort of taxonomy of dragons, really. There's the father of dragons, and then there's various subcategories of dragons. There's cold drakes, which we see later on with the dwarves. Glaurung, we should say, we haven't said yet, he doesn't have wings. So he's the first dragon, he doesn't have wings. So again, you get this like sense of like this R&D department in Angband where you can kind of picture them thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we gave it wings? So how does that happen? We don't know, but they're always coming up with more and more dangerous things. Evil powers. So yeah, as we mentioned,
even an article about somebody theorizing that he bred, because we know, you know, he liked to corrupt things, so he bred eagles. He corrupted kind of eagles and bred them with Glaurung, which would, you know, I mean, that would make them half Maya spirits or corrupted Maya spirits, like the Balrog, for example, were
the eagles said to be Maya? I don't know whether that's right.
Yeah, they were sent by Manwë, but they were lesser Maya. No?
I think that might be an earlier version of the Legendarium. I might be wrong here, but we'll have to fact check.
Oh my god, I read so.
Tell us in the comments. Tell us in the comments which one of us is right.
Okay, I think they were lesser Maya. You know, lesser than Gandalf and all that. But I think they were spirits working for Mandos. But you know, Gandalf was working for, you know, so
yeah, certainly they were like associated with Manwë. Maybe it's unclear. I don't know. Anyway,
different versions, 100%. But yeah, so he bred something, and he was the father, but he at this point didn't have wings. So not like, if you know Smaug, not like Smaug. So yeah, Siege of Angband, that lasted a few years, and like you said, he was driven back. Morgoth was medium happy about that, and then the Dagor Bragolach in 455 happened.
Battle of Sudden Flame. So this is when Glaurung.
Foreshadowing.
Glaurung was full-sized, near enough, and he broke through the Noldor lines, and he broke through the area that was called I think it was the Gap of Maglor. I haven't got this written down.
Yeah,
is that right?
Maglor's Gap.
So that was sort of in the north, near to Angband, on the sort of northeastern area of Beleriand. He broke the Noldor lines, and he burned the lands around Angband as well. So this was the area that was originally known as the Ardgalen, which is Green region. The reason I'm telling you these names is because I love these names. These are two of my favorite names, because I love how they sound, because they sound the way they should sound. Does that make sense?
How do you pronounce it though? Ardgalen?
I don't know. I'm no expert on pronunciation at all. Until the movies came out, I used to say Sauron instead of Sauron. So don't don't look at me for pronunciations at all. But it's the Ardgalen. Ardgalen. How would you say it?
Ardgalen.
And afterwards, it's known as.
Dan is like, I can't repeat that, woman.
Afterwards, it's known as the Anfalglyph.
Anfalglyph, yes.
Yeah. Which
sounds like a wasteland already, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a horrible place, doesn't it? Which means gasping dust.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can guess what happened there, people.
Yeah, he made a mess. He made a big mess. He burnt everything, and we're just like, it sounds like the Garden of Eden beforehand. To hear it described in different places, it's like it's just green rolling hills leading up towards Angband in the north. Obviously, it probably gets colder the further you get north, but it's the untilled green lands of Beleriand up until the dragon comes.
Yeah.
And then we get well, you mentioned Fingolfin earlier. Should we talk about that, or should we gloss over that? Because it's not relevant to dragons.
We need to talk. No,
I don't know how much you love this part.
Yeah, it's seriously, it's like the saddest. You know, he's my favorite character, and yeah, it's very sad. Tell us what happened.
No, you tell it. I want you to tell it.
Oh no. Yeah, you can. Okay, just the short version, but something before happened, actually, before Fingolfin wrote there. So I think it's very important to know, you know, I love maps, and you need to imagine that the Sons of Medros, they kind of circled Morgoth at that time. So you know, he was up north, Angband, and the Sons of Fëanor, under the Union of Medros, actually, they had lands all over the Middle Earth, and they kind of encircled, not really, because not up north, but Himring, Hithlum, you know, all those places, literally till the sea. The princes of the Noldor had land, and this battle was really hardcore because they lost all the territory as well. First of all, everything got burned, a lot of elves got slain, and the Sons of Fëanor lost literally all their territory, and they had to flee. So maybe, I mean, maybe if I can't be bothered, I can add a map and show you in the video, or if not, I'll link the map down there because it's really cool. Do you have it? Yeah, perfect.
I've got the atlas here next to me.
Perfect.
And I was looking at this earlier. We'll see if we can see it on camera.
Yeah, because it's very interesting, you know, because it's important to know why then later the Nirnad happened. Yeah.
I don't know if you can really see that properly, but
no. Yeah, I can. So there you see, in the middle, you can see Thangorodrim, and all the land like literally, Hithlum is really, really big on the left. Is that your left, my left, whatever? You can see it, Hithlum. All these lands except Doriath and Nargothrond and obviously Gondolin, but all the other parts you see here were the sons of Feanor. And most of it was lost. So it was a big defeat. And then something else happened before the, spoiler alert, death of Fingolfin. Do you remember that Aragorn has this ring, right? The ring of Barahir. So do you tell you should tell this story and I tell the Finrod story.
I don't completely remember the story. Is it Finrod gives him that ring?
Yes.
But I don't remember the complete circumstances, to be honest. I just remember where it comes back into the story later on, but
no, it's a bit, okay, just short version. So Finrod gets saved by Barahir and his men, and then he gives him this ring, and this is the ring obviously Aragorn later has, but this is the ring that Beren has, and that Beren then later gives Finrod, and Finrod kind of, this is an oath of Finrod that whenever Barahir's family, which is Beren's father, is in need, he will aid him, no matter, no questions asked, right? And this is years and years later, Barahir's son, Beren, comes to Finrod and asks him to aid him in the quest for the Silmarils. So, you know, all this kind of, falls into this story of the Dagor Bragolach, and that all happens there. And Finrod, who got saved by Beren's father, gives him the ring and promises to aid him whenever he needs aid. And this ring survives till the day of Aragorn, and is the heirloom of the Dunedain, of the Númenóreans. You know, this ring makes it through out all the centuries, and it first appears here, and it's a really cool story.
It's also, if there's anyone watching this that only knows the movies, it's also in the movies as well, isn't it? It's Simon shows it in a law book or something, doesn't he?
No,
pretty cool reference.
Yeah,
one of the only Silmarillion references really in the movies.
Yeah, like the Aragorn sings of Beren and Luthien, and what else? And Gandalf talks about, we can talk about that later, Gandalf talks about the rings that were forged, and then that no dragon, not even Ancalagon, could like
that's it, that's the one as well.
Burn the rings, and some of these, like little, but you're right.
That's in the book, isn't it? The Ancalagon, but yes. This is why last time as well, when we were talking about how fate plays out in this universe, you can really see this in the Silmarillion a lot, because it's like a puzzle that different pieces are laid early on, and then it builds and it builds, and then things come back, like the Ring of Barahir comes back later, and you get a sense of there being a plan.
Yes. That's what I always say.
you see that on a macro level in the Silmarillion, and you see it in a micro level in the Lord of the Rings, and that's why it's hard to detect in the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But should we move on with the story?
Yes, and you know, the focus of the story of the Lord of the Rings is very much on the ring, and you can't really concentrate on anything else, because this is the main quest. You know, the Silmarillion is so many little stories that, you know, like a puzzle go into each other. The Lord of the Rings is a bit different, although, you know, it's a companionship of various people, but it's different. It's one storyline, one coherent storyline. Yes, they split up, but still, and the Silmarillion is very different. So I think that's due to that. But yes, so just a short info on what happened to my favorite character, Fingolfin. So Fingolfin was the Fëanor's brother and the then High King, and he literally had enough of the, you know, like, he saw all his people dying. He was close to the brothers. He was close to Medros and a few of the other children of Fëanor. Fëanor was dead at this point already. You know, they were just the sons of Fëanor. And Fingolfin was the new High King. So the king wrote to Angband because he literally wanted this to stop, and he was angry that, you know, his people were slain and they lost all the land, and he wanted to confront Morgoth, the real enemy behind this, and he challenged Morgoth to a one-on-one duel. And our friend Morgoth, in the beginning, couldn't be bothered because, I mean, it's not like he is not, and I think a lot of people misinterpret this and understand this and get this the wrong way. He was not afraid, right? But he was afraid in a way because, unlike, you know, Sauron poured all his evil and malice in this one ring, but Morgoth put all his strength and malice and wickedness and everything in the whole country, in the whole of Middle Earth, except, you know, Beleriand, which was saved by the girl of Melian and whatnot. But all of the orcs, all of the creatures, all of creatures like Glaurung, all of them he created, and he gave kind of his energy to them, to the land. This is why later it's called the Ring of Morgoth, and that wasn't actually a ring, that was Middle Earth. So that's a
Sauron does that a little bit as well.
It does
later on, but it's a bit different, yeah.
Yes, it's different, and it's more like the ring. I mean, you know, all these. Yes, he breeds the orcs and everything, but how I understood it is obviously Morgoth was more powerful.
And Sauron has the rings. He puts his power into the rings more than anything, and into the One Ring in particular.
Yeah, and you know, it's
similar concept.
It's very, very similar, but
you could draw a parallel with the way that the good guys use their power as well, in a sense as well, though. But the difference is the good guys will put their power into inspiring their people, or creating hope, or protecting, or preserving. And it's a different thing with the bad guys.
Yeah. No, exactly. And so it's important to know that, you know, he was not afraid. He was not scared really, but he didn't have as much energy and power as he had before he came to Middle Earth, right? Because he poured all that into Middle Earth, into all his evil creations. So yeah, Fingolfin challenged him to a duel. He didn't want to come out, but obviously he can't lose, you know, his face in front of his armies. And
I think that's what he was really scared of, was losing face. Because that kind of is what happens as well, because Fingolfin does wound him. One of only 2 times when Morgoth gets wounded in the whole story.
Yes, and that is actually, you know, what later I think Beren and Luthien and all of them thought, you know, he's not untouchable. He's not a god. You can hurt him. Obviously, Fingolfin was really, really powerful. I know, you know, that. I mean, the concept of the magic of the elves and what they can do and what they can't do is. Tolkien never says exact, you know, that there's not a book telling you Galadriel could do this and this and this, and this was compared to she was more powerful. It's very vague, the concept.
That's not the way that the magic works, though, is it? It's not like you have. It's not like you have Dungeons and Dragons spells. Like you can cast like 3rd level fireball. It's not how it works. It's more like energy and metaphysics and kind of kind of like the essence of your spirit and how powerful your Fëa is.
Exactly
augments your power in the material world.
Yeah, I mean, for the Ainur, for example, or for the Maya, yes, in a bit, because like imagine Luthien, she could do, and later the line of Beren and Luthien, because she was a half Maya, right? So she had powers, and we know of these powers. She could, you know, she went into that duel with, and she threw down the foundations of what's it called? Where Beren was caught in the Tower of Sauron. Damn it!
It's the Isle of Werewolves, isn't it?
Exactly.
We'll go with that.
Tolin Gauroth.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, she threw down the walls, and of it, that I think a Noldor, not even a Noldor prince like Fingolfin, could do that because she was a half Maya, so her powers were different. But you're completely right when it comes to the elves, right? Although Galadriel learns from Melian, right? So she's capable of stuff Maya can do, because Tolkien says in the Silmarillion that she learns from Melian. And she's not a Maya. So anyway, okay, so Fingolfin, he is very enraged, and the scene how it is described, you know, he's riding on his horse. I forgot that horse's name, but it has a name and it's very powerful.
I do remember one line which sticks out though, is that Tolkien tells us it was like Arome was riding, was riding forth or something like this.
Yes. With Evala, you know, like riding in full anger, full speed.
He was like a god incarnate.
No, so that scene must have been epic, you know. Fingal, oh my god. And he had kind of a magic sword and a shield, you know. I think his sword was called Ringil. And yeah, so he challenged him. Morgoth finally came out, and they had an epic duel. And Morgoth had his warhammer Grond, right?
Yeah.
Which is such a cool name, and there's a reference.
It's also the name of the battering ram in Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, so super cool, and they fought. Obviously, you know, in the end, Fingolfin lost. I don't want to go too deep into this topic, but Fingolfin lost. But he could, as you said, he could hurt Morgoth. And yeah, then he kind of stomped on him, Morgoth, and broke his neck, kind of. I think that's how Fingolfin then died, you know, the High King of the Noldor. But he was able to hurt him, and everybody saw that. And then I think he wanted to take Fingolfin and, you know, like put him somewhere on a wall as a prize. And then Thorondor came, and the eagles. Yeah, and because they didn't want to let that happen, and they took Fingolfin, and Thorondor even scratched Morgoth's face, which was super cool. Yeah, so that was the scene. That happened after the Dagor Bragolach, and then the High King of the Noldor was dead.
And they take him to the mountains above Gondolin, don't they? I think, to bury him. So that, I mean, that's aside from what we're here to talk about, which is dragons. But I couldn't pass up the opportunity to hear you nerdgasm about Fingolfin. So there we go.
I love him. Isn't he one of your favorite characters as well? He's so cool.
Yeah, he is cool. You kind of wish that he was in charge from the beginning instead of Feanor, don't you? Although it wouldn't have been much of the story, or even Finarfin, who was the smart one. But
yeah, but he went back early on, so we don't know that much about him.
Yeah, he was smart enough to stay at home. So then, a few years later, we had the Neonatho Nodiad, which we talked about last time. Which this is relevant because this is the first time we see Glaurung in his full power.
Yeah.
And
that was just 20 years-ish later.
Yeah, so this is, as I said last time, this is quite a big battle where a lot of stuff happens. This is where Fingon dies. This is where Huor dies. This is where Hurin is captured. And as you said before as well, the Easterlings betray the elves. And yeah, more relevantly, Glaurung in his full force. He creates a field of fire, basically, that kind of just engulfs a lot of the elves, and it's the battle of unnumbered tears, because everybody who's left to talk about it is broken at this point.
Yeah.
And the dwarves actually have a big role in this battle as well.
Yes.
So
I talked about that.
Did you talk about this? You talked about this with Aziz, did you?
Yes. I told him about the iron mask the dwarves had.
Yeah. So it was a mask that they had that protected them from the flames of the dragon, which was just shows you the ingenuity of dwarves as well, really.
Yes, and their craftsmanship, you know. And I mean, you know, Glaurung, it was known a few years ago that Glaurung was there, and everybody expected him obviously to take part in the battle, I think. So the dwarves came prepared, that would be my guess, and they were from Belegost, you know, so that is where the old dwarven smith, like the really big smith, that is where, you know, that dwarf who forged the dragon helm of Dolomin and all that, he was from there, from Belegost. So that shows you they were really good smith.
Their king was Azagal, who died.
Azagal, what a cool name! And oh my god, and it's so sad. And when I imagine that scene, I mean, you can tell what happened, but when I imagine that scene, I want to see it on a big screen because it's actually really cool and sad.
Yeah, yeah, he manages to wound Glaurung, doesn't he? I don't have that in my notes. I can't remember exactly what happens. Does he wound his belly, or he wounds him? Where does he wound him?
I don't think that's clear. But he manages to wound him. Yes, but
okay. But yeah, so that's the Neonathanodiad. And then this is kind of.
Let me tell that what happened, you know, he gets killed, and then Tolkien tells us that the dwarves, because they leave the battle early, when their king dies, they're like, what the F? And they take their king and they put him, you know, like a few dwarves, they carry the king, the dead king, and they literally walk through this complete crazy battle, and they leave carrying their king through the front lines and go home. Okay. And I think those dwarves actually never partake in any of the other battles, it is said, after that one.
Is that right? I mean, I don't know of any, but it seems out of character for dwarves, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
you usually think of them as being up for a fight.
Yeah, but Belegost, after, like in the Second Age, it kind of gets forgotten. It's not important. You know the other.
It is out of the way, isn't it? There's the other fortress of Nogrost. Is it Nogrost?
Nogroth and Belegost.
Yes. Is that still involved in the final wars and battles?
I think it's literally the Longbeards, and I think it's just Durin's folk mainly mentioned. But I'm not, I'm not an expert on.
You're not a dwarf person, are you? You don't like the shorties.
Although I'm literally a midget, I'm like social. I could be a dwarf or a tiny orc or something like that. Tiny, but yeah, dwarves.
So then, in the year 495, Glaurung leads an army south towards Nargothrond, and this is the sack of Nargothrond, and this is where we pick up with Turin Turambar, who you've talked about him at length and told the whole story before, haven't you? So we don't want to recount his history again, I imagine. But he leads an army south towards Nargothrond, which is where Orodreth is ruling at this point. Which used to be this was the kingdom that Finrod established. But Orodreth is the father of Gil-galad. And there we have what actually I was thinking about this earlier where I was researching.
Isn't Fingon the father of Gil-galad?
Is that right?
I think Fingon is the father of Gil-galad. Yeah, Orodreth is the father of Finduilas.
Finduilas, yeah. But I thought that's where they were brother and sister. Maybe I've got that wrong. Or I might be thinking of another version of the story somewhere.
There's probably that version.
Yeah, I don't know. These family trees, like, they're always in flux. So what happened there? Orodreth was slain, and Turin beforehand Turin, we should say, in case you don't know the story, is a man. He's a mortal man, and his father was captured in the previous battle we just talked about. So he was an orphan. He was raised by Thingol and Melian, and then later on he comes to Nargothrond, which is another kingdom of elves in the far south, not in the far south, but in the south.
And it's also like a kingdom of secrecy, like Gondolin, you know, they were hidden for a really long time, and they actually didn't want to show up. And didn't want Morgoth to know where they were and show their true power.
Yeah, this was the branch of the Noldor family, the ruling family, that was less inclined towards war and death, really, wasn't it? So
Yes.
they set up well out of the way, and they were there when you needed them, more or less. But also they weren't really looking for vengeance in quite the same way that the Sons of Fëanor were. But who was?
Yeah.
So Turin, he persuades the king to send a contingent of elves out to fight Glaurung in the open, doesn't he?
He was like an advisor to the king and his first commander. He was a really good warrior.
Yeah. The elves respected him, and he was very persuasive, and he was able to sway the king in this. And yeah, it was a disaster. Basically, they should have actually probably stayed put and battened down the hatches, because Glaurung was too much to take on in the open field. And he, as I said, he kills King Orodreth, and he storms Nargothrond, smashes the gates down, and then Turin fights his way to Glaurung, and Glaurung has a power of how would you put it? Kind of hypnosis, which I don't think that's the word that
like an
Tolkien
evil
would
stare
use,
that bewitches you.
Yeah. Actually, this is a passage that I've bookmarked.
Yeah, read it.
Okay.
Is it from Children of Húrin, right?
Yeah, there's Children of Húrin there. So Glaurung, Turin is about to confront Glaurung, and Glaurung looks at him, and they make eye contact, I guess, and it's described like this. And while he was yet held by the eyes of Glaurung in torment of mind, and could not stir, at a sign from the dragon, the orcs drove away the herded captives, and they passed nigh to Turin, and went over the bridge. And among them was Fenduilas, and she held out her arms to Turin, and called him by name. But not until her cries and the wailing of the captives was lost upon the northward road did Glaurung release Turin, and he might not stop his ears against that voice that haunted him after. So what's happening here is Fenduilas is she's
daughter of Orodreth.
Yeah, she's daughter of Orodreth. And she's in love.
And she's
with
in
Turin.
love with Turin. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's married, or is she betrothed, or is she's married to. She's not married.
She fell in love with Turin, and one of the elves from there. Oh my God! I'm not 100% sure who. He's in love with Fenduilas. But the one that goes with Turin to Nargothrond, I just forget his name. And he's in love with Fenduilas, but she doesn't like him, and she's in love with Turin. But he says back off.
And the dragon says to Turin, he gives him an ultimatum, and he says, "Your mother and sister are in danger in Dorlomin, and they're slaves," which they were for a while. But at this point, they'd already left, and they'd gone to try and find him in Doriath, where Turin was years ago. And so it's a lie.
Kingdom.
Yeah. And so he says you can go and save Fenduilas, or you can go and save your mother and your sister. And Turin chooses his mother and his sister. So he goes back to Dorlomin, which is a fool's errand, because there's nothing there apart from Easterlings and one guy who he grew up with, who's mentioned at the start of the story of Children of Húrin. But it's all a big deception. And Morgoth is behind this plot. So we should say Morgoth, his whole one of his big schemes at this point is to just ruin the children of Húrin, because Húrin has defied him earlier on in the story, and
he curses him basically and says, "I'll bring your family down, and you have to watch."
Yeah. It's punishment for Húrin for defying him and refusing to give up the location of Gondolin.
And kind of making fun of him, like, "Oh, you call yourself the king of the earth. You're not really. I don't believe that," and stuff like that. You know, he's not defying. He literally makes fun of him.
It's not like he's like he's just, you know, he keeps his mouth shut. He doesn't keep his mouth shut. He takes the piss, basically.
Yes. Morgoth does not approve.
Not at all.
Drinking. What did you say? Because I said Dornish red, but we're not in Ice and Fire here.
We're not in Westeros, so I'm drinking. Shouldn't product placement. So there we go. It's what is it? It's Malbec from the vineyards of Dorwinion in Rovanion. Do you remember that? Do you remember Dorwinion? Yeah, from The Hobbit, isn't it? Yeah. Can't beat you for references.
No. I know that one.
But no, none of this Dornish red. Right. What are you drinking?
German rosé.
German wine.
German wine is good. Shut up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is. I'll send you a bottle. It's really good.
It's better than English wine, but I've
anything is better than English wine. Yeah. I mean, even Henry VIII knew that.
Yeah.
Good.
It's too cold here to grow grapes. That's what it is. So we'll pick up the story again with Glaurung, right?
Yes.
So a few years later, I think it's literally the next year. I've got the dates here. Hang on. Yeah, the next year, the mother and sister of Turin, which is Morwen and Nienor, travel to Nargothrond, and Glaurung, he creates a vapor or a steam, which is described as being like this smelly, pungent fog, which I like to think about the mechanics of that when I read that, because I've read The Children of Húrin for the first time relatively recently, actually, and I knew the story from the Silmarillion, but the way it's described, it makes me wonder, like, what did Glaurung do to create that? Is it you know, sorcery of some sort, or is it gastrointestinal?
Maybe
have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, maybe he ate a dwarf, and that dwarf, I don't know, like, caused some problems.
It's like he was saving it up for that special occasion to create a mist. But Glaurung, he creates a mist, and the mother, she seems to like go wandering off, and she gets lost, and we don't see her again until the end of the story. But the sister Nienor, she manages to confront Glaurung, and the same thing happens. He puts her under his spell, but this time, instead of just telling a lie and sending her off on a fool's errand, he rips her memory from her and destroys her mind, and she becomes this sort of like childlike, I don't know how to describe it in a politically correct way, but she becomes mentally incompetent, let's say. And she runs off and she goes north, and she heads towards the forest of Dariath. So it shows you Glaurung's power for not just martial might and destroying and smashing, but also he in both these instances he manages to hold these mortals in place just with the power of his mind and his eyes.
What I find interesting, and maybe you can add and tell me if you feel the same. So the thing is, why was Glaurung so obsessed with, because we know, you know, Morgoth and Húrin had a thing. That was never Glaurung's thing, right? And why was Glaurung then later so obsessed with Húrin's family and with Turin Turambar? It can't just be, you know,
I think the whole thing is Morgoth giving the curse a little nudge in the right direction.
Yeah, either that or what I think, and this is now the thing where I'm not sure how much of Morgoth is in Glaurung, and because I think the text says evil spirit within him regarding Glaurung, right? And evil spirit within him. That doesn't sound just like he is evil and he does evil things. That sounds something is in him. And that's what I mean with Morgoth put something of himself in Glarung. And
that evil spirit, I think that's why it matches up with Fafnir a little bit as well. Not that I'm saying that he was originally a dwarf necessarily. I think that's a bit far-fetched personally, but he could have been a Maya. He could have been something else beforehand. But we'll get to the legend and the inspiration as well.
Yeah. But that's so interesting, because why is he after this family? What is it? Morgoth had his dealings with Hurin's family, right? Why did Glarung care that much? So there must be a connection, and
he's hoarding the gold of. We haven't talked about the gold. The gold of Finrod in Nargothrond as well, isn't he?
Which is so cool. I love that element of the dragons and the gold, and go away. This is my
this is my gold that I'm going to lie on and do nothing with, and just lie on it.
Yeah, love that. I totally get that guy.
Stay away from my stuff.
Yeah, and give me gold. I mean, look. This is what I was wearing in honor of Glaurung and Smaug. I'm wearing gold today.
Fellowship of the Blade.
Yeah. This is my dragon hoard in my lyre. No, I'm just kidding, obviously. But yeah, it's a cool image, and it plays obviously with the image of what you said, Sigurd and the Siegfried in German, and the Nibelungs, and all these, stories from the Edda and all the Norse stories about the gold and the dragon gold. And then later you see it in the Hobbit with the that it makes you crazy, kind of, right?
Dragon sickness.
Yes.
Cool. And the necklace is there as well, isn't it? The necklace that they later put the Silmaril in is there, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So there's that as well. That's probably his prized possession.
Yeah, I think Hurin gets it from there and then brings it to Doriath, right?
I don't remember. It's been 6 months since I've read this, I think, at least. So I'm not sure details. But yeah. The reason I bring the gold up though is that seems to be a staple of dragonness, doesn't it? I mean, we see that with Smaug, obviously. We see it with is it Scatha, the worm, the cold drake. I don't know as much about him, but
yeah. Also in the Third Age, right? Yeah.
Yeah, early Third Age, the War of Dwarves and Dragons, which is we're told quite a bit about that in Unfinished Tales, I think.
Same.
But yeah, there's the dragon sickness. You wonder whether that's a motivator for him in the events of Children of Hurin, but it doesn't seem to really be an important factor in the story.
No, it's different from Smaug, right? Because Smaug wanted that. He didn't. I mean, obviously, he hated the dwarves. We learned that from what he says. Smaug hates the dwarves, which is funny if you know the story of Sigurd and Fafnir. And Fafnir was dwarf before. Funny that they hate each other and fight each other, and the dwarves are really good fighting them. Why? Do they know something? What does Tolkien hint at?
So this is the thing about the masks as well, because we mentioned the masks earlier from the dwarves of Belagos. How did they know to make fireproof masks that would be like the perfect defense against dragon breath? How did they know to do that?
I don't know. It's cool.
I mean, if there was a line in there about potentially maybe Aule would intercede on or something, you could imagine that.
Yeah.
I'm just hypothesizing. I've no evidence here of anything.
No, no.
But also,
No.
I mean, there is that connection with the Sigurd story. Maybe dwarves are involved in the origins of dragons in some way that we don't know, we're not aware of. Tolkien doesn't tell us.
It would be cool because if you think of what Aule did and what Melkor did, they actually did the same thing for various reasons. And this is what I talked with Aziz about. You know, Aule, he wanted to have companionship. He wanted to be a teacher to the dwarves. He didn't want dominion over dwarves. He didn't want to rule them. He didn't want to be their king. He wanted to be their teacher, their friend, you know. He wanted a folk or a race and people that were like him, that understood him, that loved the same things like he did. Morgoth was, Morgoth's intention of creating orcs and evil beings and spirits was completely different. Sorry.
This is why I like the idea and the creation myth of Arda, because I'm not a religious person at all, particularly. I mean, that's probably an understatement, but we're not here to talk about my theological beliefs. But
you believe in God.
I can get behind the concept of the Valar, and I can get behind the concept of Eru, and it's because Eru has this like awareness of nuance, and also because there's evidence for him. But he yeah, this is the story of Aule. Aule is well intentioned in creating the dwarfs, isn't he? And although he's strictly speaking, he's breaking the rules by doing what he's doing, because the children of Ilúvatar are supposed to be the firstborn, and Aule is trying to innovate and create his own children before the fact. There's a conversation and a dialogue there, and you know, they come to an agreement, and I like that. I like that as a creation myth.
Totally.
There's other parts as well that I can appreciate as well, like the music of the Ainur is, you know, it's very poetic, and I know it's not your favorite part of the book, but I like it.
No, it's just boring. No, but I love you know, that it's not a god that says, here, take what you get, live with it. You know, it's a work of many, and everybody can get and wove their theme into this song, and it's a it's a job of many. It's a teamwork, actually, right? And it's not just one god who has the say in everything, and that's actually so cool. If you know that. Sorry, my cat is literally up there staring at me.
Is she on top of the monitor?
Yeah. Why? Okay, sorry, crazy cat lady is striking again. But yeah, so that concept is actually really cool, and I love that because it varies from the Christian myth, you know, and God, you know, like in 7 days he created the earth, and it was just him, and he didn't ask anybody for anything. And here you have more the feeling a lot of people, you know, helped in creating all that.
Yeah, I like that element of collaboration too.
Yeah, and when they, you know, the Valar then later go to Middle Earth and they create everything there, and Melkor destroys it, and then they create again. And even you know, Melkor and the Valar, this kind of teamwork, because the way Middle Earth looks in the beginning is a teamwork. Melkor destroys, the Valar rebuild, and it's not Eru doing everything. It's actually really cool. And it's not a typical Christian belief or explanation of what happens, you know, in the Bible. But going back to the thing you said with the dwarves, I think that's actually really a cool idea, because Morgoth knew that Aule was forgiven, right, for what he did, because he went against the god, against Eru, but he was forgiven. Morgoth was not forgiven. I mean, he said, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm going to kill them. Morgoth didn't do all that, but Morgoth was pissed. Morgoth was envious of a lot of Valar, right? He envied their work. This is why he destroyed everything. And that concept is very, you know, there are two things how people are. You either envy somebody and you talk bad about them, destroy stuff, you know, talk behind their backs, or you are like, oh, this person wrote this book, let me write a better book. That's not how Melkor was, you know, he destroyed stuff. So
it's that way that he sets himself apart, and he's an egomaniac, and he has this kind of.
That's how I feel about him. There's two sides of evil, and his is not the, oh yeah, I'm going to do this my way. He just destroys, and yeah, he's like an angry kid to me sometimes, very often described. I was always give him some you know, most of them except the guy in the water, sorry. The water, Ulmo, but all the others had spouses, right? So except him and Ulmo was a loner, so he didn't want a wife. So maybe give Morgoth a wife, that would have changed stuff. He liked Luthien, so no, okay. But going back to that concept of the orcs, maybe he was like, you know, yes, I take Aulis. This is what I wanted to say. I take Aulis' work and labor, the dwarves, because Auli was really proud of them, and I'm going to do something really wicked and evil. It would fit. There's no proof anywhere, but it would be cool.
Something to ponder. I don't know how to continue that conversation without just saying, let's get back to dragons.
Yes,
because we started with you know, the origins of the dragons, which like is a mystery, as so many of these evil creatures are. But yeah, I like to think that the dwarves are involved in that story in some way, and just because there's so many, not just because of the mythological inspiration behind it, but there's so many repeated instances of dragons and dwarves, and they seem to keep. What's wrong? What's happened?
It's just my cat. I'm sorry. I have to let her out because she's going nuts now. Wait a second. You talk. Sorry.
I can't talk to myself. She's not going to cut this out either, so I might just have to do Lord of the Rings music.
No, I'm back.
She's back. Okay.
I love the music. Good. Yep.
So yeah, so let's get back to Glaurung before we get more sidetracked by Valor. So the next part of the story.
Allowed on this channel. Don't be so Dan. You're very German of you.
Very efficient.
Yeah. Yep, Glaurung. One last fun fact about the sack of Nargothrond, because you were talking about the dwarves and the masks. Do you know that Turin had one of those dwarven masks when fighting in? Yeah, cool. Love that little Easter egg.
Yeah. Wait, who built that? You told us earlier on, didn't you? Was there a specific smith that you mentioned?
No, no. That was the smith. I mean, he was from Belagos. That was the smith who did his helmet, and he forged the dagger that Beren used to cut out the Silmarils, and some sort. Yeah, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, I love dwarves, by the way. I was going to suggest to you during the Deathless at some point for one of these talks. I don't know how you feel about that. I find him an interesting character.
Medium
rare.
I don't know. I never thought about learning more of the history of dwarves, or when Aziz said that, let's do dwarves, I was like, yeah, let's not. And I don't know. I was never into the dwarves. I found them actually super annoying throughout all the books, because you know that they are not very cheerful, happy, tra-la-la-lolly people.
No, they're not. I love that song in The Hobbit. A lot of people don't like that part of The Hobbit. But the tra-la-la-lolly song. I feel like the elves are singing that just to annoy the dwarves, which I like that. I rate that from the elves.
It's true. Could be. Yeah, it could
I mean, the
actually be.
lyrics are just they're taking the piss out of Bilbo, and Bilbo's probably laughing inside, but the dwarves are just not having it at all.
No.
Do you think, going back, this is last week, but Glorfindel, do you think he was one of the Tra-la-la-lolly elves?
I hope not. I don't think so. Serious. No.
Yeah.
No.
Our boy Corey Olsen had this exact discussion in one of his classes.
Did he?
Yeah, when they got to Glorfindel, or maybe even before that, I don't remember. He was asking. I have to thank you for recommending that, by the way.
It's the best, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I've been watching it for 5 months now, and it's been one of the highlights of my day. Not that I'm watching it every day, but it's
Did I tell you 5 months?
Well, it was when you were on in Deep Geek last year. You mentioned it.
Ah, okay, good.
And I picked up on it, and that's why I started following you.
Okay.
Because this person knows their Tolkien. But it's brilliant. We should link that, actually.
I will. Yes, I will. Like, one of my goals is literally to talk to that guy one day, because he's funny. He knows so much. Whenever I'm like, what have you done? What have you read? How many times have you read this? It's insane. Do you have a life? And it's really good. And we can continue our life listening to that, because there's so much material, and he's just, where are they at the moment? They're in book 2, right? Because they're doing all of the 3 Lord of the Ring books. He's doing
I still haven't caught up. I'm hoping to catch up so I can start asking him questions on the forums and pestering him about things, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm up to about episode 100 out of 140.
Oh, but you're far. Oh, you're good. I did. I started with the Lord of the Rings ones, but I love the other, like, Shaping of Middle Earth ones, and this is where I have a lot of my knowledge of. Or then I go back to the books and try to find what he was talking about. And he did Shaping of Middle Earth. He did Unfinished Tales. So it's really, I love those ones. I think with the Lord of the Ring books, I'm on like podcast 11 or something like that. I'm still in the Shire, so I'm not that far along.
You've got years left.
I know.
One of the regulars on the predicted, based on the current pace that they're taking, that he would finish in 2032. Cool. And you'll probably finish listening to him in the 2040s at some point. Anyway, let's get back to dragons.
Fine with that. I'm fine with that, Corey Olsen. Yeah. No, we'll link it because it's really interesting, people, but you need a lot of time because one podcast is 2 hours ish.
Or a job that allows you to listen to podcasts while you're doing your work.
Yeah.
Which is me.
Maybe while I do PowerPoint or something, but when I'm in like finance meetings and whatnot, like, rather not. Good. So back to dragons and Glaurung, the father of dragons. So we talked about the sack of Nargothrond, and then Glarung was sitting for years on his treasure, gold. Love that image. Totally get that guy. Not being disturbed by anybody because the elves they've left Nargothrond, never came back. Sad, but yeah.
Yeah.
One of the big elven kingdoms.
I think in Children of Húrin it says that Glaurung actually sent his orcs away as well. Like he didn't need the army anymore, so he was just sitting there on the treasure, sleeping like dragons do. A little bit like cats, funnily enough.
Mine would do the same.
Have you ever? You probably know this already, but there's an anecdote about Tolkien coming up with the idea of dragons sleeping with their eyes half open, and he got that idea from cats.
Yeah, he hated cats.
Yeah, he wasn't a fan.
No.
Not a cat person.
No. This is I mean, I posted on my Instagram that Sauron actually was Tevildo, a big cat. That's Sauron's origin.
Yeah, I didn't know about this. I've not read the oldest
He
version
was
of
the
the
Lord
Beren
of
and
Cats.
Luthien story.
Yeah, like the Lord of Werewolves, he became, but he
Yeah.
started as off as the Lord of Cats, and you know, Tevildo, Tubald, same.
Yeah,
Same.
cats probably do have a very active lizard part of their brain, which probably
Yeah,
does translate to dragons in a way. Maybe
yeah, yeah.
I can see that. There's lots of things with cats as well. Gollum, his Gollum noise that he makes is a furball. That's how he got that idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, off topic again.
Cats, yeah. So, sake of
If
not.
you remember where we were in the story, we Morwen had gone missing. Nienor had been ensorcelled by the dragon, and she'd lost her memory, and she'd gone wandering off north towards the forest of Brethil, which is where our hero, our tragic hero Turin, had ended up, and he'd gradually sort of taken control of control. That's the wrong word. He'd taken over lordship of the lands of Brethil and the men that lived there gradually, and they'd come to respect him as this great hero. And he'd given up his identity at this point, and he'd almost he'd realised at this point that he was like he'd realised about the curse, and that his best option in his mind was to kind of set aside his identity. That was my reading of it. And also the dragon, I think, does something to him when he meets him. So he kind of shames him, and he the passage is about his father, isn't it? It's about Hurin and how he would be ashamed, and that how Hurin will hear about all the evil deeds that he's done, how he killed his best friend. And,
Yeah.
it's a horrible bit of spite from the dragon, which seems to be another thing with dragons that's quite consistent, is that they have a way of making you feel small with their words. There's a little bit of a parallel with Saruman and the way that he speaks and uses his voice, in terms of the way that he's quite persuasive and uses his voice. Glaurung. I mean, it's not an obvious parallel, but there's a way that his words seem to just stick in your mind and cling to your heart somehow.
Same with Morgoth a bit.
Yeah, that's true. It's a running theme, is the power of words, isn't it? But I get the sense that there's something more going on there, where Glaurung, he's done something to Turin at the end, where Turin is finally despairing, and that's why he's set aside his sort of claim to be Turin Turambar, the hero, or the Mormagil, or any of his other many personas, where he's just finally given up at the end, a little bit.
Yeah, and this is why I feel he settled, you know. He doesn't want to be this big warrior anymore, travel around being advisors to kings. He had done that. He always failed. I think Glaurung also showed him his failings, right? And his bad life choices, because that's what I always talk about. Like, this man literally made the worst life choices. He had so many choices to redeem himself or go back to Doriath, you know, or that he had so many chances, he didn't take them.
Yeah.
Was it Morgoth's, you know, Morgoth's curse, or was it his pride? Was it both? What was it, right? We don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And that goes back to that recurring theme of fate versus free will.
Yes. I think it's a mixture of both. That's my interpretation, because I don't think Tolkien wanted us to think this was all set up and you don't have a chance. Because where's the message, you know? Where's the message? That would be a really sad life then all of them live, because that would, you know, he wanted this to be a true myth. So that would speak for us, and that would mean for us, we don't have a choice. And then you would just be like, you know, everything is mapped out anyway. I just do that. That's not what he wants to tell us, but he wants to point out he could have done that. Maybe you don't want to end up like this person. Rethink your, you know, rethink what you're doing. I think that's what he wanted to tell us. You know, it's not an allegory and stuff like that.
No, it's definitely not.
Yeah, but I think it's a mixture of both, and I don't think everything was a setup and nobody had any chance to fight his faith.
Yeah, and I especially don't think that curses that come from the forces of evil, that come from Morgoth and his minions and Sauron later on, I especially don't think that those curses are binding, and
they're just there to scare you and to make you
they're self-fulfilling, aren't they? They're it's psychological warfare in a sense. It's like because Turin at the beginning doesn't know that Hurin's children have this curse on them. He doesn't know that, does he? And it seems to take a turn. There's several points in the story that just really turn events around. And I think when he learns that this curse has been made, that's a turning point. But I mean, you've asked earlier, like, what is Glaurung? What is his role? And there is a point in Children of Húrin where after Turin has left, after he's left to go to Dor Lomin to look for his mother, he sort of mutters under his dragon breath. He kind of says to himself, like, his job is done. So it's clear that that was Morgoth's plan to set him up for that. And so he's trying to give things a nudge in that direction. But yeah, later on, get back to the story. Turin is in charge of the Men of Brethil. He's leading a defense against Glaurung, who 2 years later tries to invade Brethil, which is to the west of Doriath. So it's like it's almost all part of the same big forest, isn't it? I can show you on the map, but I've closed it now. I'm not going to do that. And this is the doom and the death of Glarung at this point. Turin, he hatches a plan. I should say as well, I've totally forgotten about the sister. So Nienor, she goes north, and she ends up marrying her brother because she doesn't know who she is, and he doesn't know who she is because he's never met her before as an adult. I can't remember. Do they meet as children? Do they? They don't, do they?
Sorry.
Is his mother pregnant when he leaves? Or
he doesn't know he has a sister.
He doesn't know he has a sister.
No.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, they don't know
his
who he is.
First sister Lalaith, she dies in the plague.
Yeah, his first sister dies. I remember that part. For some reason, I remember the sister that's like, just dies when she's 3. Yeah. So anyway, they don't know who each other are anyway, which is interesting because I watched a documentary once about close relatives who are estranged, who do meet up like this, and apparently there is a thing where it's a psychological thing where there's an attraction there.
Really?
Yeah, like it's a known phenomena. Whether or not Tolkien was aware of this, or whether it was a documented thing in psychology at this point, I have no idea. But it's really weird, and Freudian and creepy, isn't it? But
it is. But this was more to point out, you know, the wrongdoing of the family, because I mean, he could go for Finduilas, you know, and she could die, and that would
she's
be
available, and she's a lovely elf. She's, you know, from a good elf family, and he's not interested.
Exactly, and it makes it, you know, like then falling for his sister, and it doesn't sound like a love story, you know. The way he describes Beren and Luthien and Aragorn and other people is way different than he describes the love of Turin and her. It's more like he settled, she was there, she's pretty, I assume. It's
so
not
she's said to be beautiful. It says that in the text.
Yeah. I think because Morwen was really beautiful. She looked like an elf, I think.
Yeah.
And you know, his mother, so her mother. So I think it's more like, you know, what you said. He kind of gave up. He was living there. He wanted to settle down. His warrior days were over, and I think it was more that. It never sounded to me like the biggest love story ever.
No,
but could be wrong.
No, I mean, you're sympathetic because neither one of them knows who the other is.
Oh, yeah. It's not like
she doesn't even know who she is. I feel most sorry for her in all of this.
Yes.
Because she's a you know, she's paying for his bad decisions in many ways.
Yeah.
Yes,
she does. And her father's, but you know, it's not a Jamie Cersei situation where they do it willingly. Different. So, but Tolkien is he's very specific on close relatives and love, and that never goes well. This is what I always say in my videos. Like, look at Meglin falling for Idril. She was his cousin.
First cousin, aren't they?
Yeah, first cousin. So no. Then where else do you have it? Yeah, when Eol kind of forces Aredel, again that same story. Aredel is Idril's aunt, Meglin's mother, and he forces. It's not love. It's weird. It's like he put a spell on her or something, and that also ends up in she hates her husband, and that is never heard of before of elves.
But I
right?
mean, that's I mean, if sorcery and ensorcelment and enchantment in that sort of way was real thing, that would be rape, wouldn't it, in our modern world?
Yeah.
It's not consensual.
No, it's not.
I'm pretty sure I've read before once, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the Eol and Aredel story, there's a version of it where he does actually rape her, like he forcibly rapes her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that shows you it's wrong, and therefore, you know, these kind of love. I mean, you know, Aragorn is related to Arwen, but that's like 1,000 generations later.
Yeah, that doesn't really count. That he's related.
Fine. That's fine, but
he's related in the same way that I'm related to somebody who's also related to, like, I don't know, Oliver Cromwell, or somebody from British history or whatever.
Yeah, I'm from Central Europe. I'm related to Charlemagne. I'm probably related to anyone here in Central Europe. So that doesn't
Vlad the Impaler, you're probably related to him, aren't you?
That is true. I can confirm that. That's a way better story. Yeah. No, but yeah, so that kind of love is never has a happy ending in Tolkien's world. Obviously this one doesn't, but as you say, you know, it's not willingly, but it just shows you the tragedy of
it's mindlessly tragic and horrible, and I think it's one of Morgoth's worst crimes, really.
It is. This is why, like, Dagorath Turin gets to kill him.
Somebody in our last video was talking about in the comments was talking about Feanor and his worst crime being the oath, and I can see that because that does a lot of damage, and it really does tie in a lot of people with his bad mistakes, and that's definitely a really well made point. But there's the personal crimes of, you know, just killing. And for me, this is one of Morgoth's worst crimes. Is just just how mindlessly sadistic it is, and how cruel it is, and
Because
mean,
he had Turin, you know, he captured him. He had Turin. Why would he do this to the family? That Turin had nothing to do with Morgoth at that point of time. So it's it's
yeah,
horrible.
it's not like he's even trying to get information out of Hurin at this point either.
Yeah.
He doesn't, you know, if he'd have captured Turin and then said to Hurin, I'll pull him apart limb from limb unless you tell me where Gondolin is. You know, you could, from a, you know, it's an evil guy thing to do, but it's not mindlessly cruel and horrible, is it? Whereas this is just it's sickening.
It is, yeah, and that he makes him sit on that chair up that mountain and watch everything. That's the worst, you know. Like he has to watch what his children go through. That's actually tops everything.
Does the text say that he has some sort of sight that allows him to see this playing out? Like
yes, Morgoth gives him that sight.
So he can see everything as if he was looking through a window, like he was in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, watching it happen.
Yeah, that's why he knew so many things, and that he has to go to Nargothrond and everything. He saw everything.
What a dick.
Yeah, and then he later, you know, when he goes to Thingol and throws the Nauglamir at Thingol and saying, well, thanks for nothing, Thingol, Hurin does that, and that's, how does he know all that? Because he saw it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, yeah, I was trying to remember a specific part where, yeah, you're obviously right, because that's how the story ends, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Glaurung.
Yeah.
Big,
so
scary, scaly, fire-breathing dragon.
Yes. So Turin goes out to kill him.
Yeah, Turin, married to his sister at this point, goes out to kill him. And his plan is to basically I've got it written down here. He lays in wait in the gorge of Cabit en Arras, which is a big crack in the ground that he scales this kind of cliff edge, and he waits for the perfect moment for Glaurung to leap over this hole in the ground, and he knows he's coming. He's a giant fire-breathing lizard, so it's not hard to figure out his approach vector.
On his way.
Yeah, and he stabs him in the belly, fatally wounds him, and Glaurung dies, but not immediately. So what happens is he falls to the ground, and Turin is knocked unconscious by the poisonous like vapors and discharges of the dragon.
The blood.
The blood. Yeah, his blood is toxic, and Tyrion falls unconscious on the edge of this cliff, and then he
and then the Romeo and Juliet moment happens.
Yeah, well put. So then Nienor, his sister, she's worried about him, and obviously no one will tell her what's happened. And the previous, what's his name? The previous leader of the Men of Brethil, what's his name?
Names, no, whatever.
So he takes her up there, and he's found out at this point that they're brother and sister, hasn't he? This guy. Oh God, what's his name?
Whatever, we don't care.
It doesn't matter. He's not relevant really, except he's really relevant at this moment. But
anyway, spoiler.
So we're not telling this very well. I'm not telling this very well. But the dragon, he has a little bit of life left in him, and when she gets there, the dragon tells Arinel tells Nienor that they're brother and sister, that he'd set this up, this was his plan, and then as he dies, the magic wears off, and then she regains her full memories, and she knows that what she's been told is true, and she despairs of events, and she thinks Turin's dead, because he's unconscious. And did she check his pulse? I don't remember there being a line about that in the story.
No, yeah. The thing is,
because I always think, just check first. Like,
well, I mean, it's Tolkien.
You could say the same thing for Romeo and Juliet, though.
Exactly. No, the thing is, I never understood. Did she kill herself because of the shame? Because I mean, she was pregnant. Right, so did she kill herself because she didn't want to be married to her brother, and that's shameful? Or did she kill herself because he was dead? Or was it both? Probably both again. But that was always the question, because in Tolkien's universe, there are like literally not even a handful of people killing themselves, except these two.
Yeah,
and one or two others.
Can you think of any other suicides? Denethor? Denethor jumps off Minas Tirith.
Denethor, and yes, Aldarian's wife, she kills herself. Is
that before the story is aborted? I can't remember.
Yeah, Aldarian and Eärendil. So Aldarian is the first Mariner of Numenor. He's the king.
Yeah, I know. But that story wasn't finished, though, was it? So I don't remember.
Yeah, but she it's hinted she kills herself. I think she throws herself in the water. And wasn't there this one elf at that river, and she jumps into the water, and she's never been seen again? I think it's maybe a handful of people that kill themselves. Sad. It's I always
it's a tearjerker of a moment. And it's
very Romeo and Juliet. When I read that, I was like, oh, it's like Romeo and Juliet.
If I can make a recommendation, if anybody is listening to this that hasn't read the Silmarillion, or the Children of Húrin, do read the Children of Húrin first. This is contrary to advice that you've given on your video where you talked about the correct reading order, but
my correct reading order, not everyone's.
You do feel more for the characters when you read the Children of Húrin, and obviously, as I said, I read the Silmarillion first, so I knew what was going to happen.
But you don't understand a lot of things that happen if you don't know the Silmarillion. That's a problem.
You don't know. Yeah.
You don't know.
But you don't know the setup, do you? As well.
Because you don't know it from the Lord of the Rings, and so just have in mind, I would read the Silmarillion first, and have in mind there is a more fleshed out version of the Turin Turambar story, and you feel more for him and you don't hate him as much, or you're like, oh god, this dude, as you just know him from the Silmarillion. That would
maybe the right advice is to buy both at the same time, and once you get to the chapter that's called of Turin, I can't remember what it's called, of Turin Turambar or whatever it is. Just don't read that chapter. Read the novel, and then come back to the Silmarillion. Maybe that's the way to do it. In fact, actually, there's at the start of that chapter it says this is told in more length in the Children of Húrin. Maybe read that book, because it is a tearjerker, and it's a moment where it's one of those unique moments where, there's not, as we said, there's not another suicide that's quite the same as this. There's not another tragedy that's quite as deep as this.
No, and in the end, we talked about, just to shorten this story, the thing is, Turin kills himself. He wakes up, he then kills the messenger who just told him, your sister just jumped off a cliff. The spell of the dragon fell also for him. He realized what happened. He realized who is who. And he takes his black sword, Gurthang. I mean, that sword was renamed 100 times. It was Gurthang at that time, the black sword, which the dark elf Ale forged. And that sword also has a life of its own. It's it comes from a meteorite from the sky. Nothing good comes from the sky. And
that speaks to him right at the end as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And that sword is kind of evil. Again, evil not, you know, there are various concepts of evil, but yeah, he kind of killed himself with that black sword, with his sword. And
he falls on his sword.
Yeah, and Melian foretold this even. Yeah, so super tragic ending, very, very sad. That family is gone because then Hurin and Morwen, they're old, they don't have any more children. Again, a line ends, and that is one of the most important lines of First Men, right?
The House of Hador.
Yes, it was actually a royal line. Yeah, sad.
And Glaurung speaks to Turin at the end as well.
Yeah, just like Fafnir. It's actually really cool.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah.
do you want to tell us in brief that story?
Yes,
because you know it much better than I do, because it's your.
Yeah, well, oh God, it's also a very long time, but this is like our myth, you know. This is a Germanic, obviously, you know, the Edda. There are different versions of that Sigurd story for us in Germany. In the Germanic version, he's called Siegfried, and it's the Siegfried saga. I mean,
there's an opera, a Wagner opera, isn't there?
Yes, Wagner, but
slightly different story.
It's different, yes. He mixed up various topics of North and Germanic mythology. So the Wagner opera is not canon, you know, it's not our Edda. But yeah, it's really cool. And the main story is foretold in the Ring of the Nibelungs. Again, a ring. Very cool. Tolkien was heavily in, this is what I always say, also George R. R. Martin, there are a lot of similarities. I promised Aziz I'll do a video about that, and then Aziz and I will talk about that story, because it's really cool. This is our myth. This was written down in the like 13th century-ish by an unknown author, and it's our prosa, the story of the Germans, and it's really, really cool. The Ring of the Nibelungs, and yeah, so Siegfried, Sigurd in the North mythology, he kills Fafnir. It's actually a really long story, and the beginning where he kills the dragon is the beginning of the story. It's not the end, like here in the Turin Turambar story. But yeah, what you said, so the dragon is actually an enchanted dwarf, so he was a dwarf before. And like Turin, you know, he kills the dragon by digging a hole and then sitting in that hole and then killing, because he knows the dragon can only get killed by stabbing him in the belly, in the womb. That's what he does. And the dragon also has phenomenal last words and tells him, you know, you can have the hoard, you can have all the gold, but it won't make you happy, and it will be your downfall. And
in the story, the dwarf turns himself into a dwarf because he's obsessed with gold, doesn't he?
Into a dragon,
and it strikes me in Tolkien that dwarves and dragons have that in common.
Gold, the love for gold, yes.
And also, I vaguely know the Norse version of this story. So I don't know whether the German version differs. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But doesn't Odin appear to him as well? It appears to Sigurd when he's digging his trenches in the Norse version.
Yeah, and I think, isn't Odin? No, wait. I think when he gets touched by the blood, he can understand the birds, and then the birds, I think, tell him, because the dragon, the dwarf, has brothers, and one of the brothers actually wanted to help Sigurd, but he is also lusting after that gold from his dead brother dragon now, and birds tell him that, but the birds speak through Odin or some. It's a really long time ago. This is the North mythology part. It's different in the German version. In the German version, Siegfried he kills the dragon, he bathes in the blood of the dragon. This is because it's so funny, because when Turin gets touched by the blood of the dragon, he falls unconscious. It's very different in the German version, because he bathes in the blood of the dragon to be unbeatable, to be immortal, kind of, because the blood of the dragon does that to him. But there's a small from a tree, like a small tree, I just forgot the word. Yeah, like a thingy falls on his shoulder, and
like an acorn or like a seed,
yeah, something like
that?
Yeah, like an acorn. And so that covers a part of his shoulder, and the blood doesn't get there, and so that's the only place you can wound him. And he tells that later to his wife. His wife is betrayed, and she spills that story, and then he gets killed, because everybody wants that treasure, because that treasure is so important. And this is the foretelling. It's different in the North mythology. That is the German version. And then his wife has the treasure, and everybody's fighting for that treasure. It's not about a ring per se. It's called the Ring of the Nibelungs, but like in Morgoth's ring, the ring stands for that treasure, and for the malice in the world, and for the lust of gold and power. It's so good. It's really
the Norse version that I know, there is an actual ring, and the ring is a magic ring that affects
magic ring. Yeah.
Because it's a ring that brings you wealth, or it makes it easier to find gold or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that important in the Germanic version. That's more about the
right.
power, the wealth, the treasure brings, and his wife gives the treasure away, so the heart of the people. It's like Marjorie in A Song of Ice and Fire. She helps the poor with money and all that. This is what his wife does with the treasure of the dwarf, with the treasure of the dragon. It's a long story, but it's a good one, and you see a lot of similarities. Tolkien picked up a lot of what happened even later on in there.
Tolkien wrote a lot about dragons, not just in the central legendarium, but Farmer Giles of Ham has a dragon.
Yes.
I can't remember. There's several different various works that have dragons. And also, we know from his autobiography, at least we were talking about this earlier off camera. One of his in the autobiography, the what's his name, Humphrey Carpenter biography, he tells us that one of the first stories that Tolkien wrote as a child was about a dragon. And it was he wrote a green great dragon, were his words in his story. This was as a child. I think it was it was 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever he was. He was a child, so he didn't understand grammar, and his mum took him aside and said to him, that's not correct grammar. You can't put those words that way round. And this was the beginning of his love of words and his fascination with the way that words are used.
Yeah.
Which I find really interesting, that was a story about a dragon that started his love of philology, that launched his career, that came back around to dragons again.
That is true, because the Hobbit, like one of the main protagonists, like obviously in the Lord of the Rings, dragons nobody really cares, because that's not the high fantasy element of the story. But in the Hobbit, Smaug is one of the main protagonists, so it's cool. That was the first one he published, and as you say, in the Silmarillion or the other stories, I mean, they had a minor role, but I think Glaurung especially, and Calagon, he had one of the last fights with Eärendil in the sky.
He was the big boss fight at the end of the Silmarillion, really, wasn't he? And Calagon.
He was, yes. And
again, largest dragon to ever exist.
Yes, and like I said in the beginning, Morgoth Morgoth saw Calagon as one of his last chances, and then came in Arundel with his bloody flying ship, Vingelot, and was like, "Yeah, I don't care. I have airstrike. We brought air force as well. The eagles came, and well, then Morgoth was effed." Yeah, cool. Good. So I think we talked a lot about Glarung and dragons. Do you have anything to add? Like, do you like? I love that character because it was not just a minion, and we learn a lot about him, especially in the Children of Hurin story, that he was cunning and that he was highly intelligent. Right? I still think he was not acting on his own, and that a part of Morgoth was in him. Otherwise, I don't understand the hatred for Hurin's family.
There's a bit in here where I don't know where it is. It might be on the page that I have open. It might not. We could be here all day if I start reading. But there's a bit in the Children of Hurin where it's describing his gaze, and it sort of says Morgoth's will is in his gaze. So it's almost like I'm really, really vaguely paraphrasing here. Read the book yourself if you're listening and you haven't read it. But it's clear that his power is an extension of Morgoth's power, and it's an extension of Morgoth's will. But with that said, he has agency. He's not a slave in the sense that even the ring wraiths are slaves, or like the orcs are slaves in the classical sense, they're like literally slaves where they've been beaten and whipped. Whereas the dragon, he's a dragon king. He sets himself up as a dragon king when he's in Nargothrond. And he's got orders from above where he goes and attacks the men of Brethil in the end. But he's like a lord in his own domain. He's a vassal of Morgoth, and a captain of Morgoth.
Yes, and you say that is the concept of the dragons, because how is Smaug described? Smaug was not a minion of Sauron. Sauron took over from Morgoth. So obviously you could think, I mean, the Balrogs, the Balrogs didn't really work for Sauron. He had his own agenda, Durin's Bane. But still, that it could be, because we are told that Sauron actually thought about getting, like Smaug wasn't working for Sauron, so Smaug would be a great ally to Sauron, but he wasn't his minion or anything.
No.
So
I mean, dragons are easy to control, because you know what dragons want. They want gold. They want gold to lie down on, and they want a hideout and a bunch of gold, and Sauron could give him that. So if Smaug was alive in the War of the Ring, he's easy to control.
But it's different, he has a mind of his own. He's his own being, and I think that is why a lot of people also speculated, is there any fallen Maya spirit as well in them? Because obviously the Maya, Morgoth convinced the Maya to go with him and leave Valinor and go with him and become evil and play along with his agenda. But they were still their own, because they were Maya. They were their own beings and spirits, and he did not create them, right? He corrupted them in a way, or convinced them to become bad, but they were Eru created them, right? So this is, why I always think maybe there is something in that. This is why I said the eagles thing, because in my mind the eagles are lesser Maya, but okay, maybe I'm wrong. And
I don't know that you're wrong. Sorry, I took you up on that.
I don't know. Maybe.
I think to remember reading something where I think it might have been Forgotten Tales, where it specifically said about the eagles. I'd have to get back to you. And as I said, let us know in the comments. If you know what's still with the eagles, let us know.
Yeah, we will look it up as well. But that is why I always thought maybe there is something in there that they are fallen Maya, or like a bread of fallen Maya, Balrogs, or whatever he did there. But because they were so independent and they had a mind of their own, and they were not just minions and described very different with their own agenda, Smaug again. Than just orcs or werewolves or stuff like that, so that is my headcanon. We don't have any proof, but that's what I believe, because I can't find an explanation why is Glarung the way he is.
Yeah, and he's sort of he's the father of dragons, and he's the template for future dragons in some ways, because future dragons are cunning, and they do have agency, and they do have kind of a mind of their own, and they're very clever in the way that they manipulate people. We see that classically with Smaug and Bilbo, where he figures out from one line of Bilbo's riddles, or one or two lines of Bilbo's riddles, he figures out where he's come from, what his mission is, who his allies are. And Bilbo's trying deliberately not to tell him this, and it's like his voice is leading him towards giving things away. And Bilbo's conscious of this, but he can't help himself. And we see that actually in Children of Húrin, because I just thought of this. But this is in Nienor says she gives away her identity, doesn't she? When Nienor meets Glaurung, he doesn't know who she is. But there's a line. Oh, how does it go? He says something about that Turin. He was proud, and he was. I can't remember what he says, but he says something. He says something about Turin's. He impugns on his honor, basically, and she responds by saying, "No, the children of Húrin would never such and such." And then she gives away who she is, and it's like his voice has talked her into giving away more information than she necessarily needs to. I never even thought of that, but that's really similar to Smaug and Bilbo, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, completely.
Bloody hell. Tolkien is brilliant, isn't he?
I say that in every stream, and I'm like, I found out new things while talking about it, and I'm like, this is weird. There's so many, Easter eggs he planted pages ago, books ago, and they play out, and everything fits and mirrors, and it's cool. I like it. Yeah, so that was a fun talk and a fun topic. We'll definitely find another good one. Maybe a good guy for the next one. We kind of like the good guys as well.
Yeah, we do want them to win, don't we? It's just now and again, when the bad guys. As much as I've said this story is very sad, I do kind of like it when the bad guys win sometimes in Tolkien.
Of course. And Tolkien likes that as well, It's like, Empire Strikes Back is obviously the best movie, right?
Obviously.
So, obviously.
That's because it's not written by George Lucas, but yeah, that's another conversation.
Okay. You're right. But still, it's so cool. But he was a creator of the universe, so don't say anything against him.
Yeah, just not a good streamer. Sure.
No, and his dialogues are horrid. I just say prequels.
I hate sand.
Oh God. Okay. Let's not talk about that here. Good. So Dragons, Glarung, that was really epic. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. Oh my God, it's almost 2 hours. That was literally one of my longest ones. And I thought, can we fill this? Can we fill an hour with Glaurung? Yeah, we can. Because I took I have these many notes, like 6 bullet points. I enjoyed it, Dan. Thank you for coming on again. I hope you'll be a regular here.
No problem.
And I'll link whatever you want me to link down there, because a few people and girls contacted Dan. Yes, Dan is very handsome. We know that now, people. Apparently, all these Americans love British handsome men, so that's a thing. You know, for us Germans, it's like, yeah, you know, they are our neighbors. Who cares? for Americans, you're very special.
Well, we are here talking about Tolkien. We are part of a wider community of A Song and Ice and Fire fans. So it I suppose it goes with the territory. But yeah, hi, I have an accent.
Yes. I mean, people make fun of my accent.
I haven't had that much attention, really. I just and yeah, this is the part we usually say to promote yourself. So do follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram at Bone Locomotive.
Yes.
And yes, I think I will be a regular, hopefully, on here. I want to keep doing this.
Yeah, I love to. I literally I love talking to John. He you know, he's very different from you. I love talking to you. I have all these amazing men boys that talk to me. I need to get Carol on more.
Bring back Carol. Yes, I miss Carol.
Yeah, I know. I love Carol. She'll be back.
Shout out Carol.
Yeah, shout out to Carol. She's awesome. And you know, Smaug is one of her favorite characters. So she will love this discussion about Glarung. She loves the baddies. And yeah, I hope I won't stay the only girl in this community, me and Carol. That I don't know any female talking Tolkien, but I hope we will change.
There are female Tolkien scholars.
I know scholars.
And artists.
I know all the artists. Oh my god, a lot of them.
There's some brilliant artists.
Yes. No, I mean,
you should reach out to Dr. Dimitra Fimi.
I know. I follow her on Twitter. I love her. She's cool.
I bet she'd come on if you sent her an email.
Yeah, she's cool. Yeah, I stalk her on Twitter. Yeah, good. Again, for me, I'm writing some videos. I hope to drop them next week whenever you listen to this. And yeah, that will be it. I also have a collaboration coming up with another American Tolkien scholar, and he has a YouTube channel as well, and Instagram and everything. The Nerd of the Ring. He does really cool videos as well. So
I've heard of him.
Yeah, so I'll do a fun live stream. We are setting up something and find a cool topic. So I'll talk to the Nerd of the Ring. Such a cool name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and yeah, that I'll be on Geek Chat on Sunday with my Cantina Buzz. That will be a regular thing. Every Sunday I'll be there giving you people Star Wars updates with JR and the lovely Gemma from Secrets of the Citadel and Gina. So we are a team now, and we do this every Sunday. We're back. Yeah, that's it.
I keep meaning to catch that one. I didn't make it last week, but I'll try and tune in on Sunday. I'm around.
Yes. Oh, and this Sunday I'll be on Steven's. Yes, and this Sunday I'll be on Steven's channel, also talking Star Wars. For me, it will be May the 4th. For them, it will be, because it's an American time, it will be May the 3rd. But we'll talk Star Wars and a lot of really cool people. Sanrixian is on there, and Stephen, John, a lot of Maester Mary, you know, from the Song of Ice and Fire community. A lot of really fun people. It's a big panel, and we'll talk Star Wars. That will be a lot of fun. I'll tweet that out. So yeah, thank you.
I caught up on Clone Wars the other day.
I haven't. It's so good, isn't it? It's so good.
As much as I like Rebels, I kind of wish that we didn't know what happened with Order 66, because I'm really looking forward to this next episode, but I kind of also know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a double thing, but yeah, the last few episodes have been really, really, really cool. You'll talk about that.
Everybody says so. Yeah, I know. Next week, when the last episode drops, I'll binge it then. All together.
Are you not up to date? then.
Saw the first 2 episodes.
Okay. Yeah,
but I can.
The Ahsoka arc is quite cool. It's
Oh
good.
my god, you know, she's one of my favorites, and now she'll be in The Mandalorian. I'm happy, makes me happy. Yeah, cool, good. I hope she takes on Qui-Gon's role as the Grey Jedi and understanding how Jedi were supposed to be. Hope that.
Yeah.
Good. People, thank you for making it for almost 2 hours with us. And yeah, that was it. Bye-bye, my lovelies.
Bye-bye, lovelies.